Greetings all, and welcome to the 55th episode of TM Technical Movement. For today, we'll be looking at the Blaze Kick, Flare Blitz, Heat Crash, Searing Shot, V-Create, Shell Trap, Fiery Dance, Sizzly Slide, and Inferno Overdrive attacks. Much as the name suggests, the Blaze Kick attack involves forcefully striking with the foot cloaked in intense flames to inflict damage. The Blaze Kick is an exceptionally rare close quarters attack that only Combusken, Blaziken, and Hitmonlee are able to learn naturally, and even then, Hitmonlee only have access to it as a result of their general mastery over nearly all kick-based attacks. The Blaze Kick is effectively little more than a forceful, full-powered kick delivered while the user's feet are cloaked in intense flames, either generated metabolically in the case of Hitmonlee, or as a result of already present fire-type powers, as is the case with Combusken and Blaziken. This brutal strike takes some time to prepare, and is thus not perfectly accurate, but the fact that it can effectively deal considerable damage to anything it hits nonetheless makes it a worthwhile move to have. Moreover, the combination of forceful kicking and intense heat seems to heighten the pain response of any target that manages to get hit by the attack, in turn granting it an increased chance of scoring a critical hit. Add on to this the fact that the move additionally has a 10% chance of actually burning the target, and you have a move that can easily make the lives of Grass, Bug, Ice, and Steel-type Pokemon miserable in close quarters, even though the move is unaffected by items like King's Rocks, more than explaining why it was eventually converted into TR41 for Silphco's first line of TRs, even if it was discontinued afterwards. Since an opponent must utilize his legs in order to execute a Blaze Kick attack, damaging the appendage before the attack can connect, or extinguishing the flames responsible for its elemental attributes, can help reduce or even negate the amount of damage dealt by the attack. If this is not an option, however, moderately agile Pokemon should still be able to dodge the attack in close quarters. Strong Rocky Armor can also help reduce or negate the damage dealt by the attack, but weaker Rocky Armor is unlikely to perform as well, and Metallic Armor is likely to take exceptional damage from it in most situations. The Blaze Kick attack is a rare enough move that it probably should not be much of a concern in practice, but considering how much damage it could potentially do with all of its included attributes, it is a powerful strike that should be avoided at all costs with evasive maneuvers, in conjunction with strong defenses and protection against critical hits if the opposition has access to it. Similar to the Double Edge attack, the Flare Blitz attack is a violent full-body tackle delivered while the user is cloaked in flames with such force that could potentially break the user's internal structure, potentially inflicting lethal damage on both sides in the process. Although the Flare Blitz attack is practically identical to the Takedown attack, in that it is a reckless tackle that causes a considerable amount of the force delivered to be reflected inward in the form of a concussive backlash, and thus inflicts 33.33% of the damage done back onto the user in the form of recoil, the Flare Blitz attack is exceptionally risky and should probably be avoided as a frequently used attack in battle. For one thing, the Flare Blitz attack is far more powerful because the user is not simply throwing its entire body at the opponent without care, it's doing it deliberately. As a result, the Pokemon using the attack can build up considerably more momentum and maintain it throughout the duration of the attack, delivering devastating amounts of damage in the process. While this makes the attack even more accurate than a standard tackle attack, it also places the user in more danger than most trainers actually realize. In short, the sheer force delivered with the Flare Blitz attack is often enough to actually damage or even shatter the internal framework of the user, placing them in life-threatening danger every time the move is used. The attack is truly one of desperation, and is rarely used by trainers unless they are fully confident about their Pokemon's abilities, but even then they can never truly be certain, as the Flare Blitz attack's method of execution differs from Pokemon to Pokemon and from moment to moment. The move can certainly deal tremendous amounts of damage accurately and for relatively little stamina, but for what it's worth, it's still probably a better choice to rely on other moves unless no other option is available. In truth, this means that the Double Edge attack and the Flare Blitz attack are virtually the same move. The only real difference is that the Flare Blitz attack is delivered while the user is cloaked in fire. While this does nothing to change the general structure of the attack, though it does mean it can instantly thaw a frozen user before use, it does grant the same elemental properties possessed by other fire-type moves, and has a 10% chance of inflicting a burn and is thus classified as such, with this difference being enough to land at the spot of TR55 in Silphco's first line of TRs, and TM165 in the 9th generation line of TMs. Since the Flare Blitz attack involves a full body charge, it is fairly difficult to counter the attack with physical force alone, which is only made worse by the fact that the attack is also exceptionally difficult to dodge in close quarters. Strong Rocky Armor can help reduce or negate the damage dealt by this attack, but weaker rocky armor is unlikely to perform as well, and metallic armor in general is likely to take exceptional damage from it in most situations. Overall, the Flare Blitz attack is an extremely risky move that forces trainers to put the well-being of their own Pokemon in danger to deal large amounts of damage, so it is unlikely that will ever be seen outside of fairly desperate situations, unless the opponent is fairly risky to begin with. Even so, Pokemon with strong defenses and heavy armor are heavily recommended for taking the brunt of the attack's force, as unarmored Pokemon are likely to take catastrophic damage from it when the attack connects. In essence, the Heat Crash attack involves user leaping into the air and hitting an opponent with a full body slam while cloaked in harsh flames. While the body slam attack can be learned by a fairly wide variety of Pokemon, the Heat Crash attack is completely limited to a small handful of families and serves as a testament to both the ingenuity of physical attacks and to what can happen when vertical and horizontal forces are combined elegantly. In a traditional body slam attack, the user simply hoists itself into the air as much as possible before crashing down onto the target. With the Heat Crash attack, that vertical momentum is combined with an initial horizontal momentum and fire to increase the amount of damage it is actually capable of doing, though not without some additional consequences. Because of the way it is executed, the way in which damage is dealt by this attack becomes completely and utterly dependent upon the difference in mass between two opponents. While it is somewhat difficult to completely gauge the precise amount of damage that a Heat Crush attack can deal depending on the overall difference between masses, a general guide has been determined for most trainers. Under the worst case scenario, namely the opponent being at least 50% heavier than the user, the attack is relatively weak and only demonstrates an average base power of about 40. As the difference in mass begins to increasingly favor the user though, the base power of the attack begins to climb substantially until it eventually reaches 120, which only happens when the opponent's mass is no greater than 20% of the user's own mass. In practice, this can make the Heat Crash attack a bit tricky to use against fairly large opponents, but if the opposition chooses to fight with lightweight Pokemon, the potential for damage is extraordinary, which might explain why it was made into TR-88, Vasilko's first line of TRs, and then into TM-189 in the 9th generation line of TMs. Since an opponent must utilize his entire body to deliver a Heat Crash attack, attacking them before impact can help reduce negated damage dealt by the attack. Otherwise, however, it is extremely difficult to dodge the attack in close quarters. Strong rocky armor can help reduce negated damage dealt by the attack, but weaker rocky armor is unlikely to perform as well at higher power levels, and metallic armor is likely to take exceptional damage from it in most situations. The Heat Crash attack is a tricky move to work with, and unlikely to be seen in many cases, but if the opposition has access to a Pokemon with this attack, it is a potentially devastating strike that would be best countered by using heavyweight Pokemon with strong defenses to maximize the difference of mass against the favor of the opposition. Considered to be one of the signature attacks of Victini, the Searing Shot attack involves user generating an intense scarlet ball of fire, which is then fired at the opposition like a meteor to inflict damage. The Searing Shot attack is a surprisingly powerful attack that Victini possessed the ability to utilize straight from birth, or so it is believed, and is perhaps the most useful move they have out of their entire attack repertoire for all types of combat situations. Because Victini's fire-type powers are completely pyrokinetic, they're able to move and control the flames used in their attacks to a far greater extent than other fire-type Pokemon, case in point being the Searing Shot attack. The Searing Shot itself is a large ball of fire contained within a powerful psychic shield that allows it to rage at intense temperatures without being cooled by the surrounding atmosphere. When fired, this powerful burst of fire rockets off towards the target like a meteor and impacts them head-on, showering them with intense flames. Aside from being considerably powerful and having no negative strings attached, the sheer temperatures within the attack are enough to inflict a burn about 30% of the time, an impressive feat considering that Victini supposedly are born with access to this move. Overall, the Searing Shot attack more than fits the definition of a broken attack, and can more than make life miserable for anyone unfortunate enough to have to face a Victini in battle, especially since it is affected by items like King's Rocks. Due to its use of pure fire to inflict damage, the only way to directly counter the Searing Shot attack is to extinguish the flames used in it before they can inflict damage, as it is extremely difficult to dodge otherwise. Strong rocky armor can also help reduce and negate the damage dealt by the attack, but weaker rocky armor is unlikely to perform as well, and metallic armor is likely to take exceptional damage from it in most situations. The Searing Shot attack may not be something that most trainers will have to worry about, but if stuck facing Victini in battle, the attack is still an immense threat that only strong defenses will be able to effectively counter in practice. Also considered to be one of the signature attacks of Victini, the V crate attack involves user generating an immensely hot flame on its forehead before ramming itself into the opposition at full force, generating a massive explosion of raw pyrokinetic energy capable of searing and scorching almost anything. The V crate attack is a rare move that only Victini can ever manage to master in battle, but it is nonetheless a powerful strike that exceeds the capabilities of all other fire-type moves by a large degree. In effect, the V crate attack could be thought of as a modified form of the Flare Blitz attack. Instead of coating its entire body in flames, however, Victini merely generate a large intense flame on their foreheads before diving headfirst into the opposition. When they impact their target, however, Victini generate a massive burst of raw pyrokinetic energy that literally explodes across the surrounding area and inflicts absolutely massive amounts of physical damage to anything unlucky enough to get in the way. On the downside, however, the attack takes a bit of time to prepare and thus can potentially miss, but more importantly, its use takes a tremendous physical toll on the user and lowers its defense, special defense, and speed stats in response to the huge amount of power needed to deliver damage at the critical moment of impact. Even so, the tremendous amount of damage the attack can inflict is more than enough to make its use worthwhile in any traditional power, and truly demonstrates just how dangerous Victini can be despite their small size and cute appearances. Due to its unique attributes, there is no way to directly counter the V crate attack, though exceptionally agile Pokemon can still dodge it in close quarters. Strong Rocky Armor can also help reduce or negate the damage dealt by the attack, but weaker Rocky Armor is unlikely to perform as well, and Metallic Armor is likely to take exceptional damage from it in most situations. The V crate attack is a deceptively powerful blow that few trainers will ever have to worry about seeing in battle, but when the opposition happens to have a Victini that has access to the move, only the strongest of defenses and a prayer or two will be able to protect your Pokemon from complete devastation, though the move's negative effects on the user's stats can be taken advantage of afterwards if one still has any Pokemon to battle with. Considered to be the signature attack of Turtonator, the Shell Trap attack involves user injecting large amounts of sulfur into its shell spines and then waiting for the opposition to make contact and set the stored explosives off. Because they cannot maneuver themselves very well in battle on account of their large shell, Turtonator have instead come to use their heavy shells as both a defensive shield and, through this unique attack, a deadly weapon for all that stand before it. This move is initiated by the user injecting large amounts of sulfur from inside its body into the spines on the back of its shell, loading them and priming them for detonation. They can only hold this excess sulfur for so long before they have to release it back into their bodies to prevent internal damage though, as the substance has been known to accidentally activate on its own and cause damage to their shell if it is in the wrong place at the wrong time. If the opponent hits Turtonator with a long-range attack while this excess sulfur is in their spines, the move will fail. But if they are hit with a direct attack move and manage to survive the hit, it will automatically trigger the trap and ignite the sulfur stored in their shells, creating a massive explosion that will deal catastrophic damage to the opponent. The fact that this move can hit multiple nearby targets at the same time, only experiencing a 25% drop in base power, as well as the fact that it's affected by items like King's Rocks, makes it a devastating defensive attack to work with, and definitely a move that makes Turtonator much more than a simple defensive shield in battle. Unfortunately, there is really no conventional way to directly counter or dodge the Shell Trap attack without placing your Pokemon in extreme danger. Strong Rocky Armor can help reduce or negate the damage dealt by the attack, but weaker Rocky Armor is unlikely to perform as well, and Metallic Armor is likely to take exceptional damage from it in most situations. The Shell Trap attack is a rare move that most trainers won't have to worry about seeing, but if an opponent does have access to a Turtonator with this move, avoiding the use of moves that require direct contact to work is highly recommended, as the sheer power of this attack makes it unlikely that even Pokemon with strong defenses will be able to survive without receiving critical damage from it. Considered to be the signature attack of Volcarona, the fiery dance attack involves user flitting about rapidly and spreading numerous ember skills in every direction, producing a searing blast of fire that deals significant damage and potentially makes the user more powerful than before. Despite not having the raw power of other fire-type attacks, the fiery dance attack is a unique move learned by Volcarona as a way of dealing both intense damage to a target and increasing their overall capacity to deal special damage. In essence, a fiery dance attack involves Volcarona flitting about rapidly and spreading large volumes of ember scales at once, in turn generating a massive burst of fire that scorches a nearby target and inflicts considerable damage. In turn, however, The mass release of Ember Scales causes Volcarona to slightly overproduce them to replace what it has lost in the execution of the move, in turn increasing not only the power of their fire-type attacks, but enhancing their metabolism and allowing them to deal special attacks with greater ferocity and power. In short, this means that the Fiery Dance attack has a 50% chance of raising the user's special attack stat with every use. While it might not be as effective as a Charge Beam attack in that regard, the Fiery Dance attack is considerably more powerful and more than offers Volcarona, which are already devastating special attackers to begin with, the chance to effectively turn anything that dares to stand in their way into little more than a pile of ash at the cost of relatively little stamina, a trait made even more effective by the fact that it is also affected by items like King's Rocks. Although a strong burst of water can potentially extinguish a Fiery Dance attack, the sheer number of Ember Scales used to create the attack makes it too much to directly counter or dodge in most cases. Strong Rocky Armor can help reduce and negate the damage dealt by the attack, but weaker Rocky Armor is unlikely to perform as well, and Metallic Armor is likely to take exceptional damage from it in most situations. The Fiery Dance attack is certainly not a move likely to be seen in most fights, but if there is a Volcarona on the battlefield, it is a vicious and devastating strike that only strong defenses will be able to properly resist, as well as powerful attacks and techniques that can immobilize the opposition or otherwise knock them out before this move increases their offensive strength too much. Considered to be a signature attack of Special Eevee, the Sizzly slide attack involves user cloaking itself in extremely intense flames and charging into an opponent forcefully to cause damage. The Sizzly slide attack is a rare move that is only learnable by a select few types of Eevee who have unique elemental access to the powers possessed by the evolved forms because of an abnormal mutation in their bodies that stabilizes their genes to make them less prone to evolving, but at the same time grants them limited access to the powers the evolved form can wield, even if the move itself is still very much artificial in its usage and requires a special move tutor to even learn. In essence, this attack harnesses the fiery power of Flareon and enables Special Eevee to use their internal body heat and a special flammable oil they can secrete from their bodies to effectively ignite said liquid, in turn engulfing their body in an intense shield of fire. Thankfully for the rare type of Eevee that can learn this move, their fur is not just a lighter shade of brown compared to the average counterparts, but is also surprisingly flame-proof, so this oil can burn on their bodies without completely setting them ablaze. Once they are engulfed in fire, these creatures will then charge forcefully at their target, dealing the same amount of damage with the attack as a powerful flamethrower attack would deal. However, this is not the end of the attack by a long shot. Because of how intense the flames are that burn with this oil, the extreme heat from the attack is enough to scorch anything that the flames touch, effectively guaranteeing that anything that survives the initial blow is seared painfully, leaving them with a burn. This helps to make the attack a devastating force to be reckoned with, and even if the Eevee using the move cannot get a stab bonus from it, it is still a powerful offensive and tactical tool that can make these Eevee a far greater threat than their average counterparts. Since the Sizzly slide attack involves a full body charge, it is fairly difficult to counter the attack with physical force alone, even if the flames are partially or completely put out by water, which is only made worse by the fact that the attack is also extremely difficult to dodge in close quarters. Strong Rocky Armor can help reduce or negate the damage dealt by the attack, but weaker Rocky Armor is unlikely to perform as well, and Metallic Armor in general is likely to take exceptional damage from it in most situations. This attack is certainly one that very few will ever get to see, if only because it is limited to only being learned by a few select Eevee compared to the global population, but it is nonetheless a powerful move that can definitely make these little creatures a far bigger threat than they might otherwise seem, and in the case of this move in particular, leave their opponents with an irritating burn that will limit their capacity to counterattack against them with physical strikes. In essence, the Inferno Overdrive attack involves user generating a massive explosive ball of fire and blasting the opposition with it, detonating on impact and dealing immense damage in the process. The Inferno Overdrive attack is the main Fire-type Z move available for all Pokémon to use, provided that they are holding a Firium Z and have access to a Fire-type attack of some sort. When the Firium Z is activated and a Pokémon has selected a move to use as a base to build the attack off of, the crystal's power will flow through them and harmonize with their body in preparation to use a Fire-type attack. With the power concentrated and ready for action, the user will utilize the power contained in the Z crystal to generate a massive unstable ball of flame of incredible size and temperature in front of them. With the projectile completed, the user fires the attack with a large blast of hot air, causing it to careen into the opposing Pokémon and detonate on impact, creating a fiery explosion and dealing potentially catastrophic damage to the target. The overall base power and whether or not the attack deals physical or special damage will depend upon the base move used to initiate the attack, but the end result is a move with far more power than the attack the move is built off of, with the strongest variation only being possible through the use of the V-Create attack. Regardless, this is still an incredibly powerful move, even if the massive energy influx needed to execute it can only be produced once per battle, and most certainly is a move worth relying on, if needed, to obliterate the competition. Due to its unique attributes, there is no way to directly counter or dodge the Inferno Overdrive attack, and while strong Rocky Armor can help reduce or negate the damage done by the attack, weaker Rocky Armor is unlikely to perform as well, and Metallic Armor is likely to take exceptional damage from it in most situations. That's it for this episode, so stay tuned to the next episode of TM Technical Movement. Thank you all for watching this video. It always brings me great joy to see others enjoying the work I do to try and make the world of Pokemon and the fascinating creatures that lay inside of it feel as real as they possibly can. If you really enjoy my work, please feel free to leave a comment and subscribe, as I always do my best to respond to any and all comments that are left on my videos. In addition, if you wish to learn more about my work and help support it, you can find links to my Patreon page, as well as email and other contact information to my work on DeviantArt in the video description down below. Furthermore, you can find a link to my Discord server there as well if you'd like to get a first glimpse at what videos are coming up next and converse with other fans of the world of Pokemon. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and have a wonderful rest of your day.